I'm Chuck Wallenick. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years, I used everything I learned and gathered in historical reenactment to bring history to life for my students in the classroom. To that end, I'd wear the garb, I'd play the music of the time period, I'd expose my students to the art, I'd bring in artifacts for them to handle, make it a kid-friendly experience. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore, so I've had to repurpose myself, and what I'm engaged in right now is a very pretentious sounding Mission Odyssey, where I get to incorporate all that garb that I have at the house, that passion I have for bringing the past alive, which is why I'm involved in historical reenactment on the weekends, a desire to preserve landmarks, and a desire to play history detective. So my Mission Odyssey has me traveling throughout Alta California and stopping at each of the sites that I can find, and I would wear the garb during this process and tell the stories of each of these places. So I'm visiting the missions, the asistencias, those are spin-off missions, the estancias, those are the ranchos that were designed to support the missions, and the presidios, the fortifications, which were to protect the missions and Spanish interests. Well, where I'm going today is I'm going to Mission San Francisco de Asís, or as it's more commonly known as Mission Dolores. And this will be the 19th mission that I will be visiting in the chain, and the 6th mission built. So I hope you stick with me on my journey. While I'd like to pretend this is the 54 miles from Mission San Jose or the 46 miles from Mission Santa Clara to Mission Dolores, in reality, I got up around midnight and made a 6.5 hour trip of 410 miles to do this because I wanted to beat the crowds. If you're going to talk about San Francisco Bay, you have to talk about early exploration, which begins with Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, who sailed along the coastline of present-day California to a point north of Russian River and named the discovered territory Nueva California. But he did not sail too close to the shoreline for fear of being shipwrecked, and thus he became the first of a number of European explorers who missed the Great Bay east of the Golden Gate. Sir Francis Drake, during his English buccaneering activities along the California coast and his circumnavigation of the world, anchored his ship, the Golden Hind, in what was likely Drake's Bay, a small 8-mile-wide bay just west of Point Reyes that Cabrillo had first sighted in 1542 at about 30 miles northwest of San Francisco. Though he remained for 6 weeks, he never sighted the entrance to the bay. The reason probably being fog. Portuguese-born Sebastiano Cermejo, sailing for Spanish King Philip II in 1595, who found Drake's Bay, missed San Francisco Bay too. So did Sebastian Vizcaíno in 1602 and 03 during an expedition in preparation for a colonization plan for 1606, 1607, which never happened. Once Russian fur traders began to expand their business on the western coast of North America, King Carlos III ordered the Viceroy of Mexico, José de Galvez, to send land and sea expeditions to colonize Alta California. Galvez and Padre Serra decided to set up a chain of missions, some protected by presidios, to ensure control and communication along the coast. The military governor of the Californias, Portola, was given command of the land expedition, and Captain Villa the sea expedition. The parties left San Diego by June 1769, and on September 30th, Portola's expedition reached Monterey Bay but failed to recognize it. Captain Villa's supply ship from San Diego was nowhere in sight, so the Portola expedition continued north. They reached the San Francisco Peninsula by late October. Seeing a vast body of water, Portola sent Sergeant Jose Francisco Ortega on a 3-day scouting mission to dispel the notion that this was Monterey Bay. Ortega assumed it was an estuary. It turned out to be San Francisco Bay. Portola may not have been impressed with his discovery of San Francisco Bay, but Spain certainly was, and a number of expeditions were ordered to the north. In the meantime, the number of missions in Alta California grew to 5. Then the De Anza expedition traveled north to scout a location for number 6. On June 29, 1776, Padres Francisco, Paulo, and Benito Cambon celebrated the Mass of St. Peter and St. Paul beside the lagoon named Dolores. And the mission was going to be San Francisco de Asís, but it will later assume the name of the lagoon. So it would become Mission Dolores. All right, there may have been Mass June 29th, which, by the way, becomes the city of San Francisco's birthday. But it's still not official yet. What ends up happening is there's this expedition. Most of their supplies aren't there. The supplies are on the package ship San Carlos. The San Carlos left Monterey at the same time the land expedition did, and predictably enough, the land expedition arrived first. So instead of waiting around, Padre Paulo and Lieutenant Moraga decided, no, we're just going to start laying out the mission. We're going to make do with what we have. And about a month later, the 2 Padres and 6 soldados de cuerda, the leather jacket soldiers, a couple of families, some servants, they remained at the mission site, and Lieutenant Moraga basically took everybody else and went, okay, we're going to go lay out the Presidio. And as it turns out, the San Carlos arrives August 18th, so there would have been 6 weeks gone. The small lake into which Dolores Creek emptied was later filled in, graded, and eventually covered with houses. When the 1906 earthquake struck, buildings on the filled area were severely damaged. Of course, it doesn't become official until Padre Serra shows up October 4th, and the mission is officially dedicated October 9th. Gazing out at the waters flowing through the Golden Gate, Padre Serra exclaimed, "Thanks be to God that now our Father St. Francis with the Holy Cross of the procession of missions has reached the last limit of the Californian continent. To go further, he must have boats." So who was going to get to reap the benefits of being involved with Mission Dolores? The majority of the natives were Ohlone, who were hunters and gatherers, and I've mentioned them previously in other videos, and that was a pretty efficient system for them. The thing is, too, they also lived in different areas seasonally. So the ones right around where Mission Dolores was, the village of Chuchoy, that wasn't a village that was occupied all the time. So that meant the Ohlone would move out, during certain times of the year. And go, oh no, this place is horrible. We know a better place. And that was not something that the Padres understood, because first of all, they thought hunting and gathering was primitive, and agriculture was obviously, so much more sophisticated. And they didn't like the idea of their workforce moving around, so they would try to encourage the neophytes to stay there. Also, Besides the Ohlone, there would be the Bay Miwok, Coast Miwok, and Patwin, who also became part of the neophyte population at Mission Dolores. When Ohlone returned to their seasonal village of Chutchoy in December of 1776, where the mission was already being built, they had some what were described as violent encounters with the Spanish. Actually, the Spanish point of view is recorded, the Ohlone point of view isn't. But Padre Paulo wrote that the Ohlone were harassing soldados and harassing women and stole everything in sight. And one native was whipped for it, and there were others that were accused of doing this. And of course, because those natives denied, committing any crime, what ended up happening is the soldados went after them and ended up capturing them, getting a couple to confess, and they got whipped pretty severely. And this seemed all very matter of fact of, yes, this is just how they are. This is why the Ohlone need, or the neophytes need Christianity. That's kind of a grim start to the mission. Now let's go to the year 1782. There's all sorts of construction going on. There's a dormitory for the unmarried women. There's Padres' quarters built. There's all this building out of adobe that's happening, except that it starts to dawn on the Padres, this isn't really a very good site. As far as growing food, this isn't working out so good. So people will talk about, okay, then the mission moved to this site. The mission moved 5 times before it got to this place in 1785. The church was resettled at its present location in 1785, about a half mile from the original site, and construction started on the permanent mission structures. Dedicated April 3rd, 1791, the church walls are 4 feet thick, built of sun-dried adobe, made of playa soil or a mixture of local clay, sediment, and straw. These bricks were made in forms 4 inches deep by 8 inches wide by 16 inches long. The completed adobe structure was, according to Spanish measurements, 44 varas long and 13 varas wide. The interior space is only 22 feet wide. Its narrow design and 4-foot thick walls are thought to be responsible for the church enduring the 1906 earthquake. Well, I'm used to this idea. Looks like I'm coming back to Mission Dolores, and I hope you stick with me on my journey.